Well, okay, so after the ENT doctor told me that everything was okay, we left there, and okay, that's not the case. Her speech therapist said, "Have you considered a developmental pediatrician?" What's that? So she told me. So I started doing some research, and as I got on the phone, the first doctor that came highly recommended was only taking preemies. Okay, that's a little slow now. The next doctor only took Medicaid. Okay, threw that one out. The next one had such negative reviews that it pretty much scared me to even take her there, so I didn't do that one. The other one was so new to the area, no one had any opinion about her. Or him. I didn't know if it was a he or male or female. So then I came upon Dr. Johnson's number. So I gave him a call. And, you know, they sent me a packet and told me that they really focused on low-income children, or this is what I remember Sandra saying.
She might have.
That's really their focus. But that Sloan wasn't a problem to take in. We can just get your insurance information and we'll work with it. Turns out Diana, her swim teacher, was trained by Dr. Johnson.
That's just freaky.
Which really threw it all together for me.
And you went,
oh, okay, so I filled out the paperwork.
Had you talked but at this point you and Diana hadn't...
Well, she was still on me because we were going to take swimming again.
Okay.
So she was still on me. And then when I told her where I was taking her, that's when I remember Diana saying, "Oh my gosh, that's two." And I went, "Oh, okay." So now my trust is growing with Diana, my friendship's growing with Diana, and I know we're going back for swimming again. Then I knew that was just a done deal. So I got the packet, and I remember I filled it, and Sandra said, "As soon as you're done filling it out, get it to me, because when it gets on my desk, that's when you get in line. It's not by the phone call or any of this. Once I get the packet, then I put you in line to call." I filled that thing out the day I got it and drove it over that day before they closed. And I said, "Sandra," and I said, I was in the and I actually was, I was downtown. I was in the neighborhood. I thought I'd bring this to you. And she was, "Oh, okay." I was like, the mail's going to take too long. We're not going to sit her. And with telling Paul.
But the fact that you drove it over, and this sort of reminds me, you know, again, not freaking out, but saying, you know, let's make this a priority.
Well, and we had found out we were pregnant. We were trying to have another baby, and for 2 years we had no success at getting pregnant. So when we got pregnant, that was right around this time, and all of a sudden I had a time frame in my brain of the time I had alone with Sloan. In my head, I could see the calendar going like this.
Okay, we got to get this going now.
And I thought, okay, Paul, I've really got to get on this. If I'm going to get aggressive about it, it's now. So that was part of the drive to go take the form to Sandra. So then Sandra calls me back. We go in for and I thought, 4-hour evaluation. Okay. And Paul said, "Do you want me to go?" I said,
the whole team.
Yeah, but I had no clue what was going to, or how. Later on, I found out mothers would tell me, 4 hours. They diagnosed my child in 30 minutes. You know, where did you go? What did they do? You know, and so when I came out of Paul asked to go. I said, "Paul, really, it's probably going to be another box we check off. She's going to be fine. You don't need to go. I'll call you as soon as we're done." Because I was told we would be told at the end of the evaluation. So we go in, and this whole team walks in, and it's all, you know, and I was surprised that I even got to be in the evaluation. So they all come in, and everything is so easy, and Sloan, and they're so good. And what got my attention was the age range of the therapists, the techniques of the therapists, and how they were all a team. They all traveled together, and when one would sit down and would get stuck, the one behind her would say, "Well, try this," and they'd go, "Okay," and they'd never take her eyes off of her. And at the end of their little thing, they'd go, "Okay, I'm almost done," and as soon as they'd roll away, the next one would come in. And there was hardly any, they didn't make Sloan wait, they didn't really make it torturous for her, and it was clear to me that this was a team, which caught my attention right away. And the really odd thing was, I still didn't know who Dr. Johnson was. She never introduced herself. She looked like she was part of the therapy group, or a therapist group. And so they all left, and Sloan and I spent about, 30 minutes alone, eating, playing, and the whole team comes back in, but there's this one extra person there. and they introduced her as a mother liaison, and I kind of felt a brick sit in my stomach going, why am I getting a support group all of a sudden? Like, what are you going to tell me? You know, it's like, and then I thought, no, they're just bringing a mother in because I'm a mother, and then Dr. John, when each therapist went around and said, Melinda, remember me, I'm so-and-so, I'm the such and such therapist, and remember the test I did with her? Well, this is how I scored her. Do you agree? I was shocked that she wanted my opinion. And I went, actually, yes, I do agree. It was amazing to me that she wanted to make sure that I understood what she did, that I understood her scoring, and that I agreed with it. Then they'd go to the next therapist. And then the next one would do the same thing, and the same thing, and the same thing. And then they said, okay, well, Dr. Johnson. I was like, oh my gosh, this is Dr. Johnson. I was like, didn't know that was Dr. Johnson.
The one over 30 person in the room.
Yeah.
30 person in the room.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And it did make sense because she never really got down on the floor with her or did anything, but she observed her team and sat by me and talked to me, but I never took the time to look at her scrub top to see Dr. Johnson. And I said, oh my gosh, you're the... She's like, oh yes, I forget to introduce myself. And I was like, oh my gosh.
By the way, it's important to remember that Melinda is a clinician and has some, substantial medical education, and so her observation of these things, I think, is a little different from
someone who isn't in the medical field,
yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
And so to watch the evaluation and then listen to the evaluators, I think gives Melinda a little bit of distance that perhaps...
And maybe the way I receive the information also about...
Well, yeah, and what I would have said is it forecloses to her some of those emotional escapes, which would be, this isn't happening, and I don't believe you, and I don't, and so... My
child's fine.
Yeah, and so, Melinda's watching and listening and knows the processes she goes through with people when she's doing an eval on their teeth. And I
get a diagnosis of their mouth.
And so she's watching these people, and that was one of the first things that Melinda said to me, was she said, these people are really good.
There was no question in my mind by the time we got to Dr. Johnson that whatever came out of her mouth, I was going to agree with, no matter how hard it was going to be to hear. But to that second, Kavita, I did not hear the word autism till it came out of her mouth. And when it did, it was as if everything just stopped. And I could feel my insides rumbling, and I could hear, and I was trying so hard to contain my emotions so that I could continue to hear the information that I was so pleased with. It was sort of the grabbing the knife that I knew I had to grab. I couldn't help but grab it because I agreed with it, but I had to take it. And so they said, now Melinda, that's why the mother liaison is here to help you. And I thought, oh my gosh, they thought of everything. Okay. And I still wanted to run out of the room, but my more sensible side said, sit here and ask questions, get the information. And then that's when they told me they used to sit and do the rest of the eval at that appointment, but they found it hard to give more information than the diagnosis, which I completely agree with. It's time for me to go soak this up and come back and get the information. So they were all very good. In fact, when I finally, I think probably about 10 minutes into them talking after saying the word autism, I started crying. I'm about 3 months pregnant. I'm just hormonal beyond all. I'm more emotional. I'm usually pretty good. I don't cry. Do you think I'm pretty stable? I don't cry at the drop of a hat normally. So this was very, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm crying, and I apologized. And Dr. Johnson put her hand on my lap and she said, I want you to stop thinking what you're thinking right now. And I said, what's that? She said, this isn't your fault. Wasn't because you're a bad mom, you didn't do anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm thinking? And I thought for her to take the time out of her professional doctor hat and just put her hand on my knee and say, it's not you, and it's going to be okay. She's young. This is when we'd love to get them all, but we don't. The norm is to get them before 6. And getting them younger means so much more hope and so much more time that we get with them. And this is great, Melinda, this is good. I'm like, well, there's nothing good about this right now.